You started your own business, you got your accountant bill, so you decided to become an accountant.
Yeah. So, you get so many no's from investors, but then you get the one yes, and they kind of validate the idea and you can move on to the next stage. But a lot of, why would you combine these two things? Like banking works perfectly well over here, accounting software works perfectly well over there.
Yeah.
Why would you put them together? Where I wanted to be the founder, I wanted to be the director, the shareholder, I wanted to be involved in the decision making. I went up to my two friends and I said, how do I get in on this? And they said, you can't. I mean, me personally as an entrepreneur and a founder, I like to do things differently. I embrace change. I like to think differently and approach things differently. And I think most people aren't like that. Most people don't like change, just like the way things are. And I think that's where the pushback comes. Why put these two things together? What works now works perfectly well. Why try and change that?
Tim Fouracre, he's the founder of Countingup. Countingup provides your business current account and your online accounting services, and he bucks the trend where people say if you don't know how to do something, get an expert in to do it. When he wanted to understand how accounting worked after getting a high bill from his accountant, he decided to become an accountant. When he had an issue with banking, he decided to create a bank, just like everybody usually would. He's the founder of ClearBooks, an online accounting platform that has investors, co-workers, working alongside those. What drives you to leave a business you founded to start another? My name's Richard Osborne. This is Drive, the small business podcast from UKBF.
Tell us first, what is Countingup?
Countingup is a business current account with integrated accounting software. So we're on a mission to make it easier to run a small business, and very simply that's what Countingup is.
I found a post on UK Business Forums back in January 2018, and it was you had signed up to UK Business Forums. I don't know if you even remember this.
I was probably trying to get customers at the time. Was I abusing the policies?
No, it's nothing like that. Don't worry. You was asking the question about what has effectively become Countingup. Now, I know that Countingup is one of the significant players in the banking, sort of small business banking space now, and as an organisation, Business Data Group and Countingup work together, and you're a significant client of ours. So I know Countingup is doing well. So when I found this post on UK Business Forums where you was muting the idea. So a lot of people come onto the platform and say, I'm thinking of doing this thing, that they're getting feedback. You muted the idea of what do the members here think about having a bank for your business that also has an integrated accounting platform for doing your accounts.
Yeah.
And the overall response generally was negative.
Yeah, I got a lot of no's. I've got a lot of this is a terrible idea. I got a lot of why would you combine these two things? Like banking works perfectly well over here, accounting software works perfectly well over there.
Yeah.
Why would you put them together?
Do you think it's an element of sometimes people don't know what they really want because they've never heard of it before?
Yes, absolutely. So I'll tell you where the idea came from for combining these two things. So I was running my previous company, ClearBooks, a cloud accounting software similar to Xero and QuickBooks. And I was observing my customers getting their CSV bank statements and importing them into my accounting system, or Yodlee bank feeds at the time to pull the data in. And I just felt like there was just this massive duplication of data and effort, because in the bank account, you've got your actual bank transactions. In the accounting system, you create an exact replica called the cash ledger. In the bank account, you set up a payee. In the accounting system, that's just called a supplier. And in the bank account, you pay people. And in the accounting system, you record the fact that you pay people. Yeah. So we're doing the same thing in two places, calling it different things. And I felt like if we could just combine this into one product, it would be more automated, more seamless, and just simpler for a small business. So that's why, I really believe the idea was a goer. But so many people said no, so many investors, like raising money, so many people said this is a stupid idea, Tim. Why would you put these two things together?
And that's the thing, because I'm on the same side of the fence as you. It just makes complete logical sense. Speaking as a small business owner myself, admittedly it's been a few years since I couldn't even log into our accounting platform now. But I remember doing that myself, and there is so much duplication. And to be fair, we're now in 2022, and it's a fairly commonplace. But going back nearly 5 years now, you was right at the forefront of thinking we should do this, and you had all that negative sort of feedback from it, but you still went ahead and done it. So sort of two questions really. First of all, what's your view on why there was a negative feedback for it? What was some of the challenges, for example? And then the follow-on for that is, why did you still go ahead and do it?
So I think, me personally as an entrepreneur, a founder, I like to do things differently. I embrace change. I like to think differently and approach things differently. And I think most people aren't like that. Most people don't like change, just like the way things are. And I think that's where the pushback comes. You know, why put these two things together? What works now works perfectly well. Why try and change that? So yeah, I guess, you know, my reason for going ahead and bringing banking and accounting together is because I truly believed it was going to be better for small businesses. I thought it was a new way of doing things that was innovative, and I'm very determined to see things through, and that's why.
You grew up, or much of your childhood was in Ghana, is that correct?
Yeah, so from 11 to 16, I went to secondary school in Ghana, in an international school. And
then you moved to the UK, and that's where your mum started a business, is that right?
Yeah, so before we moved, so my mum's where I get my entrepreneurial kind of zeal from,
that's and
the get it done kind of mindset. So my mum had set up a ballet school in England when we lived in England. We then moved to Ghana, and she set up the first Royal Academy of Dance ballet school in Ghana, and I believe in the whole of West Africa. And then when we came back to England, she resumed her ballet school and set up a theatre school. So she's always been, you know, sort of running these ballet schools at the weekend and, you know, Friday evenings and so on. So I grew up watching my mum do that. But when we came back from Ghana, I had to do a piece of A-level coursework for my computer studies A-level, and I can't really remember how it happened, but I ended up creating a dance school database for my mum so that she could run her business. So it kind of did the registers, sent out invoices, created letters for the parents, and she used this to run her business. And actually what happened was she and her business partner paid me for the software, and then they had loads of ideas about like improving it. So I constantly was getting paid to make these improvements to the system. And it really kind of connected the dots for me between, I've got this skill programming, I can do this this programming thing, and I can get paid for it. And that really kind of continued throughout the rest of my career, that, you know, those two dots being joined up.
And I don't know, was it that same piece of software that led into ClearBooks?
No, so that database that I created, I made a website. So I was like 17 years old, and I made a website. I put it put out that it was for sale. I expected all these ballet schools and theatre schools to come and buy this thing, and no one did, because I knew nothing about promotion and sales and marketing. But no, what happened next was, so after university, I worked as a web developer for a couple of friends of mine who hadn't gone to uni. They'd set up a business, it was doing really well, and I was making websites. But having that kind of entrepreneurial sort of thing in my heart where I wanted to be the founder, I wanted to be the director, the shareholder, I wanted to be involved in the decision making, I went up to my two friends and I said, you know, how do I get in on this? And they said, you can't. And one of them, the CEO, actually said to me, Tim, if you think you can do this, go and do it yourself, in a kind of flippant way. And so I did. I left, I set up my own web development company. It was doing really well. So I was making websites, I was getting traffic from Google, monetizing the traffic with ads. I remember one of the first checks I got from the ad partner was for £7,000, and I was getting paid £17,000 a year in the company I'd just left. So it just sort of, it was doing really, really well. But I knew I was using tricks to get traffic from Google that wouldn't last. I also felt like I don't have a profession to fall back on. If this business fails, what am I going to do? And then the final straw was getting the bill from my accountant at the end of the first year. So the only cost in the business was me, and then this bill comes in for £1,000 for a report and an instruction to pay a tax bill. And I thought, surely I can do this myself. So I joined KPMG to figure out how to become an accountant so that I could do
So
my
just
books.
to roll back for that moment. So you started your own business, and you got your accountant bill, so you decided to become an accountant.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I'm
Yeah.
following that correctly.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that and the goal was, so I joined KPMG. The goal was, as soon as I qualify, I'm going back to the business, and I did that. As soon as I qualified, I left. But yeah, so now I'm an accountant working at KPMG. My business was still running on the side, the web business. So I started doing the accounts for myself. I started doing the accounts for my mum and her dance schools, and then, being an accountant who can code, I've just created a program, a web-based piece of software, so that I could do the books and maintain the books throughout the weeks and months, and that's what turned into ClearBooks.
Okay. Hanging on the point of you joining KPMG, the perception I've got from what you're just saying there is that there's a cost, there is an aspect to the business, so you went and learn how to do that so you could do that yourself. I see a synergy there in what Countingup is at the moment, but quite often advice given to business founders is focus on what you're good at and then buy in or bring in the resource to do all the other bits, where you seem to spin that on its head a little bit. Explain that.
Yeah, I mean, what you just described there, my CTO at Countingup is a big believer in buy rather than build if you can, and I fully kind of support that. But I guess early on in my career, I don't really know what was driving it, but I think, as I mentioned, it's partly I just felt like I haven't got anything to fall back on if this business fails, so I need a kind of safety net, and becoming an accountant would give me a profession for life. So it was partly kind of survival thinking, and then it's partly that I wanted to figure out how to do this myself, because I thought it would help me in the long run being a businessman, having the ability and the skill to understand and read like the finances of a business. So that's what kind of drove me to it.
Yeah, I mean, it served you well in the long run anyway, because as you just got to there, that led to you creating ClearBooks.
Yeah.
And to tell us a bit what ClearBooks is, or
So
it still is, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
It's still going. So ClearBooks is cloud accounting software for small businesses. I ran that company for nearly 10 years. I learnt loads building that business, and I was able to, take all those learnings, and all the failures that I made and the learnings as a result. I was able to take all of that into Countingup. But yeah, no, ClearBooks, similar to Xero, QuickBooks. We used to compete in the early days against. I was always looking at cash flow and free agent. But it was a really good business, but it never became. Like I honestly thought when I started ClearBooks, I was building the next Sage. I really believed that I'm building this huge company, and it's a really good business, but it was never a FTSE 100 company, and that actually started to become a bit kind of demotivating for me, and it's part of the reason I left. The other part was this new idea, which I just really believed in, combining banking and accounting. And for various reasons, I couldn't do that within ClearBooks, so I started afresh because I really believed in the idea.
Okay. Why, looking back in hindsight then, is there any parts you can identify of why it never lived up to or matched your aspirations, dreams you had for it?
Yes, so I was very hung up on equity, and ClearBooks started. So the business I used to work for, the web dev business, when I left uni, the one run by my two friends, they actually invested in ClearBooks, and we started it as a joint venture. So it was a 50-50, and I always was hung up on having 50% equity, and I didn't want to go below that. And that was like just a stupid, psychological, naive sort of thinking that I had. So because of that, we never really took any investment, or we did eventually. We never took any professional sort of venture capital or fast growth capital. So it never had the opportunity to become the big business because just there wasn't the war chest to grow the business. I mean, Xero had raised £10 million within its first year of existence, and ClearBooks has raised nowhere near £10 million in its entire lifetime. So yeah, they're the kind of learnings.
You mentioned something, and as you were speaking, I instantly threads and even conversations I've had. I think that's quite a common thing that business founders will not always, many business founders will see their business as their business, their baby.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it's not unusual for people to be hooked up on owning a controlling stake. If we word it out, so like 50% or 51% seems to be the one that everybody's I see gets hooked up on. But it's my feedback on, not feedback, but response to that when somebody says that is it's better to own 10% of something huge than 90% of nothing.
Yeah. So I think being a second-time founder with Countingup was really, I was really fortunate to have that opportunity to go again, because when I started Countingup and having experienced ClearBooks for nearly a decade, I went into that with my eyes wide open to the fact that I'm going to go for this. It's going to be venture capital backed. We're going to try and build a big business, and I'm not going to get hung up on the equity for the reason that you point out. Having a small part of a big business can be much more prosperous for you and for building a big business if you want to have a big impact. But yes, I think first-time founders get hung up on how much they own the business.
You mentioned sort of lessons learned as well and sort of challenges faced. Tell us about some of those during ClearBooks days.
Yeah, I mean, I guess these are just obvious things that you'll hear from any founder, any business book you read. But having gone through it, experienced it, and then having a second chance to do these things right from the beginning or get them in place, just things like having a very clear mission. So our mission at Countingup is to make it easier to run a small business. I don't think we ever really codified our mission at ClearBooks or when I was there, or having a really clear vision. Our vision at Countingup is to build this one financial hub for 1 million small businesses. I didn't have a vision at ClearBooks, and just having these kind of tools give structure to the business and help everyone that's working, as part of the team, know why we're here and where we're heading. Loads of small things as well, just like tactical details, like how to run an efficient meeting. First 5 years at ClearBooks, I was hopeless at meetings, and then you kind of realise you need to document the actions and people need to be responsible for them, and the next meeting you need to start with have those actions being done. So you just kind of pick these things up over the years and
the accountability part from some of those. Yeah. So did ClearBooks, I think I know the answer to this one then, did it have a business plan?
In my head. Actually, that's another massive learning. So, I mean, ClearBooks was, I was 26 when I started ClearBooks, and I was that kind of young entrepreneur who wanted to do everything, tons of ideas. I wanted it to be an accounting system, a payroll system, an HR system, a CRM system, a help desk system, and we built all of this functionality. And we ran our business off ClearBooks, but we didn't have the we lacked focus, and we didn't have the capital to make all of these things really successful. I mean, we built some really great product, but in the end, we shut down the help desk system, we shut down the CRM, and I think, and all the others as well. We retained the accounting and payroll. So yeah, I think that was a big learning to get focus. And at Countingup, we're very focused. We've got a very clear vision of the product that we're building, and a lot of it really is about just executing on the plan, because there are still things we need to do on the banking side, there are still things we need to do on the accounting software side, and it's just executing on that kind of product roadmap plan.
Okay. And where is ClearBooks today?
It's still a great business, still serving thousands of small businesses, a great piece of software. If you're bigger than a one-person business, I'd recommend that you use ClearBooks. I mean, we actually use ClearBooks at Countingup. We're a 65-person business now, and yeah, we used that to run our business.
Okay. And how did you exiting or leaving ClearBooks come about?
So one is the idea that was sort of eating away at me, that I just felt these things should be combined. Two is it needed venture capital to launch. I mean, the banking side was very expensive to get started. It also needed to be, I felt it needed to be built from the ground up, banking first, mobile first, which is the opposite of ClearBooks. ClearBooks was a web-based cloud accounting app. So, and then the other, it was just, there was not the buy-in from the other shareholders. Again, just people sort of.
As in, when you say shareholders, so the ClearBook shareholders.
Yeah, the other large
start.
shareholder in ClearBooks. This is a bit of a risky idea. It's not proven. So I stepped away because I really believed in it.
Okay, but as where I'm coming from is as the founder of ClearBooks and the person who sort of effectively created that company with some other investors. How did that whole transaction, how did the conversations go, and how did it actually work for you to step away from the business that you founded and to leave it still running, for you to then pursue this idea that was eating away at you?
So the other shareholder in ClearBooks didn't believe in this idea. And so there wasn't a buy-in to do this idea within ClearBooks, and we didn't have the money to do it either because it's really expensive, as I mentioned, to kind of launch the banking side. So the only option I had if I was going to do this was to leave and start again. And there were other frustrations for me at ClearBooks as well. Like we had we had an agreement where my salary was controlled by the other shareholder, and I felt I was being underpaid. I'm still good friends with the other shareholder. The two of them. One of them was the best man at my wedding, and the other one was an usher. So the two guys that I worked for at the company where I started my career. So it just sort of naturally happened that I left and started counting up.
I'm struggling. For me, it seems surreal because I'm trying to relate to the situation I'm in at the moment. Now, I can't imagine a situation where I could leave, but presumably somebody's had to come in and run that company.
Yeah.
Presumably something had to happen to your shares. So there had to be a plan for that. There has to be something put in place to ensure, because ClearBooks is still running, so something had to happen.
So, okay, actually, I guess there's another jigsaw piece here. So my wife now runs ClearBooks.
Right. Okay.
But she didn't immediately. She'd worked. So there was a bit of a family core to ClearBooks. So my brother was one of my first employees, and he heads up the support team. My sister worked for me for a number of years, maybe it was 5 years. My wife joined the company probably 3 years before I left, and she was still there when I left. But she didn't immediately take on the role of CEO, but she is now. It was actually quite funny when my wife started at ClearBooks, because she came into my office one day, and she just burst out laughing because she'd come into the office to ask me a question, and this never happens in our relationship, that my wife would be asking me a question about how to do something. So but so I guess that's the missing
right,
piece.
okay.
Yeah.
So are you still shareholder then?
Well, it's ClearBooks is my wife's, and
Right.
Countingup is mine.
Right. Okay. That's where I sort of come to. I've worked with my wife a few times. We've decided we can't work together. Marriage is absolutely fine, but we've decided for the sake of our marriage, we just can't work together.
Yeah.
Very different scenario, but we did try it a couple of times. So that happened. You exited. What was having been through ClearBooks and experiencing that you need this funding? You've already said like starting a bank needs a lot of money. What was the next few months or even perhaps years for you to get Countingup off the ground? What was that like?
It was. I mean, it's challenging, but also I love that part of it as well. So you get so many no's from investors, but then you get the one yes, and they kind of validate the idea, and you can move on to the next stage. So I mean, the first part was securing our first round of funding, and actually, I'd left ClearBooks. I'd already recruited my CTO, who was someone I'd been at sixth form college with, and he was like the cleverest guy in our computer science class, and I'd been going for beers with him, telling him about the idea and asking him if he'd join, and he quit his job, joined before we'd even raised any money. So
was you effectively pay at this
no
point?
one was paying anyone. He was unpaid.
So so there's no money.
There's no money. He then roped in someone that he went to uni with, who again joined, no pay at the moment. There was promise of it, because I was talking to lots of investors. I was like, we're going to get it next week. And then he roped in a friend of his, and also this guy was unpaid. So there were 4 of us, and for the first 2 months, my CTO was unpaid. For the first month, the other 2 were unpaid as well. So everyone had taken, a bit of a gamble, and I was frantically trying to raise this money, and I'd raised half of it from a VC who said, Tim, if you can get matched funding, we'll give you the money. So I got a commitment to half of it, and then it was just trying to get the other half, and that was challenging, and that actually came from business angels.
So how did you because you can't just walk up to somebody and said, I need 10 million quid or whatever it was. What prep work did you need to do to even start that journey off, and did you work with other agencies, or was it you locked away in a room putting together your investment memorandum?
All I had was a PowerPoint.
Yeah.
That was all I used to raise the money, and it was approaching people on LinkedIn that I knew that had run successful business or had successful businesses. It was there was one guy who invested. And he introduced me to another person, and got introduced to another. And it was just following the rabbit hole of people that might invest, and just pitching them this PowerPoint and this idea. And it resonated with some people. Some people got it immediately. And, it was just keep knocking on doors until you've got all the money that you need.
How comprehensive was this PowerPoint?
It was 10 pages. It was not comprehensive at all. There was no product at all. It was just an idea. The guys had started working on the product, but we had nothing to show anyone. And then it was 6 months of hard work, just heads down, trying to get this thing launched and in production, which we did. The guys launched a business current account in 5 months, which is amazing.
And how many doors did you need to knock on?
Oh, hundreds. I think, yeah. Over the 5 years, I must have easily spoken to 500 investors, and we've got 50 on the cap table. So it's, yeah.
It's so quite. I still find it amazing that it's a 10-page PowerPoint. Yeah. From the outside looking in for that sort of part of the journey, because I just see Countingup what you're doing now, and I don't know any of this sort of back story until talking now, and the fact you can put together a PowerPoint with an idea, mindful that it was just an idea at that time, and your earlier comment about not wanting to, not being hooked up on equity. How does that work then if you're an entrepreneur with an idea, you're going out knocking on business angels, venture capital, so these big investment funds, to get them to believe in your idea, to put the money up. How does that work now then with, and I'm not asking you to say, my equity is this, but my perception, a lot of people watching this, all they know about investment is what the dragons say on Dragon's Den. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I can imagine this. If you go on Dragon's Den, the TV, the good TV aspect of it, it's like, you've just got an idea, it's worth nothing.
Yeah,
So how is that in practice?
I don't think I would have got any money on Dragon's Den.
No, I don't think you would have done either. But you did.
Yeah.
Which to me emphasises that Dragon's Den is great TV and they are real investors, but there's a whole world of people who support entrepreneurs out there. But how does that structure? What is it like in the real world?
Do you know, I think I'm fortunate in that I had built a previous business, so that gave some credibility. Like I had built a business, but some investors would say to me, you know, especially the venture capital ones, it's all about, you know, growth and fast growth. And some would say, you know, why didn't you leave Clearbooks sooner? You know, it wasn't becoming this, you know, FTSE 100 company. So why did you stick around for 9 years? And some people saw that as a kind of weakness that I kind of stayed. And my answer was, well, I didn't have a better idea. Like, I've only just had this idea, so that's why I'm starting on the new project. Yeah, so that's sort of how I think about it. I think I was lucky that I had a bit of a track record, and that helped.
Okay, but what? Presumably there are security. They're not just going to give money away. There has to be some sort of security protection. I'm throwing things out there for you to sort of say, like Ratchet or something like that, that sort of makes things somewhat more commercially viable from their perspective.
Yeah. So for the angel investors who made up half of that first round, you know, I guess they're protected on the downside in some respects with the advantageous tax treatment. So like EIS tax relief and SEIS tax relief. So if we had gone bust, they would have been able to claim back a large portion of their investment. So, you know, that's really good. That's great about. I mean, that's a really good system that we have in the UK to encourage early stage investment. But then, I guess, with the more sort of formal VC terms and term sheets and shareholder agreements, you know, there's all sorts of things that they put in to protect themselves. You know, if the business failed, they would, and so say it was sold for less than what had been invested, they would get paid out first before the founder. You know, so there's sort of anti-dilution provisions, and you know, there's all sorts of warranties on me, or certainly in some of the early years when there's more uncertainty, there were lots of warranties. So if something went wrong in the business and it was my fault, I would be on the hook for £70,000. I think was what the first sort of set of warranties were. So yeah, I mean, but I went into it sort of knowing all of this and not being scared about it and sort of embracing it. I think had it been my first business, I would have been, you know, they would kind of put you off. But I think you have to weigh up. Do you want to try and grow a big business, have a big impact? Then this is just the terms of the deal. So,
yeah, and when you had those meetings and you got those first set of investors in, what happened next? How did your working day change?
So actually, at this seed stage where it was just taking an idea and bringing it to life, they were really good about just letting us get on with it, because I mean there was no point having board meetings or or doing anything formal because we didn't have a product. We just needed to build the product. So actually, everyone was really good about just letting us get on with that. And we did, so it was just sort of heads down, build the product.
Okay. And when did it move from, you said it took about 5 months before you had your first bank account open.
Yeah.
In fact, focusing on that, what was that day like?
It was amazing because we went around these shops with our MasterCards, just buying stuff and depositing money into our bank accounts, our current accounts. So yeah, I mean, that was a really cool day. Yeah.
Was that a celebration, or was that a test, or was that a bit of both?
It was a test. Like we had to do this kind of pavement testing where you've got to make sure the card works in shops and it doesn't work where it shouldn't work. And so, for example, like gambling sites, you have to kind of try it on a gambling site to make sure it doesn't work, because that's one of the kind of excluded typologies that we don't allow on the system. But yeah, no, it was fantastic. And I think as entrepreneurs though, you're always kind of looking to the next thing immediately, and maybe you don't savour the wins enough. But it was always, okay, now we've launched, now we need to get some customers. You're always on to the next hurdle.
And what was that hurdle like? How did you approach that hurdle?
Well, so we were running out of money now because we gave for 6 months. We'd spent all this money on our banking partner, and the next hurdle was getting some customers to prove that people actually wanted to use this, and then B, raising the next round of funding to keep going, so that we could get more customers, build a bigger product team, and move to that kind of next stage of growth. So yeah, it was around showing some growth, product market fit, that people wanted this product.
Okay, and I imagine at the back of your mind, well, did you have the naysayers playing in the back of your mind? You've built the product, you've got some seed funding in, we've got to get some people using it now. Loads of people and some investors, you said earlier, have said, no, stupid idea, don't do it. What was your mindset like at that point then? And did you have those sort of, those voices in the back of your head?
Yeah, every round of funding, it's the same. So we did our kind of pre-seed round to get us off the ground, and then we did on this kind of venture capital path what's called the seed round. And I was talking to loads of investors. We'd launched the product. I was trying to raise money to now grow the team and grow the business. And it was no, because we hadn't got any customer traction. The minute we managed to unlock that, which we did, and it was lucky break or whatever, but we managed to get a channel working, which gave us consistent new customers. And the minute we had that, and I was able to show that to these VCs I was talking to, the conversation flipped, and they were now very ready to kind of invest and back the business. So yeah, it's just you've got to again just keep pushing.
Okay, and do you? You've got the banking side and you've got the accounting side. Are they, as a product owner, as someone to put that together, is it exactly as the original plan was? Is it all are your customers engaging with your platform as you had the vision for it the early days, or have you had to adapt the business plan somewhat? Or
so when we launched, it was very much the business current account to begin with, and then we've been layering on top the accounting functionality over time. So it's taken us time to get to, the complete, the two-in-one. So we're there now with invoicing. You can do an MTD VAT return. You can snap as soon as you use your MasterCard, you get a notification to snap your receipt, and it's matched to the transaction. And your accountant can get web access, so you can collaborate with your accountant, and they can self-serve and get access to all your information securely. But it wasn't there from day one. Like day one was just a business current account MVP. You could do your banking, and we've had to build and build and build on top.
Okay, so presumably one of the challenges you have with when you've launched a business at sort of that sort of stage, and now you're here, is working back through your back catalogue and getting them to transition and move into the extra services you're rolling on.
Yeah. I guess as they become available, they become adopted. So, for example, with invoicing, not every business needs to invoice, but when we made that feature available, immediately people that need to invoice in their business started using it. And we're still working on both the banking and the accounting. So recently we launched scheduled payments on the banking side, so you can schedule a future payment and schedule recurring payments. And as soon as we switched that on, it just got immediate uptake as people discovered it. So yeah, it's just I think all of these things are quite findable, and as they fit how you run your business, if it's relevant to your business, it immediately kind of starts getting used.
As you sit where you are, well, maybe not in this particular chair, but when you're sort of where the business is now, is there any points when you look back and think, I went through this journey at ClearBooks. I've learnt these lessons. I'm now going through Counting Up. What lessons, if you was to do something else now, would you look back at your experience with launching Counting Up? You think, I'll take that lesson into my next idea?
So something we've instilled in Counting Up, which I hadn't done at ClearBooks, but has been really useful, is just like having a framework around quarterly planning. I mean, we use, it's quite a common one, OKRs, like setting an objective, key results, a clear plan for the business about what we're going to do over the next 90 days. And that's been really good. And I'd take that into a new business. Just doing things at speed. So at ClearBooks, great business, but over a decade it was all quite slow. Counting Up, opportunity to do things differently and try and go at speed. But just the importance of executing at speed, and I take that into a new business. I'm not sure actually what else, but
yeah. So because it sounds like apart from the sort of proving the model in the sense of we've built it, getting people to give you some initial seed funding, then getting to prove to get people using it, that it's been quite an easy journey. But I can't imagine starting a bank is an easy journey.
So why it's been easy? It hasn't been easy, but we know where we want to go. Yeah. So that's the easy part. We know what we want to build, and we know the things we need to do to get there. And so it's been easy in that sense. The hard part has been actually doing all the things that we need to do to get there. But ClearBooks, I just fell into that, in a way. I built a tool that I needed to run my own business and to help my mum's business, and I didn't know what we needed to do. And I was actually, there was a tool we used called Get Satisfaction. I don't think it exists anymore. But I was getting loads of feedback from my early kind of customers about, can it do invoicing, can it do VAT and all this sort of stuff, and can it do recurring invoices? So I was just discovering what we needed to do as we went along. But I having had that experience, I kind of know what we need to build this time. I mean, the banking, to be fair, the banking has been completely new to me. Yeah. That's been a new world, and with the compliance and the fraud and the AML, the KYC, all that sort of stuff. Has been new to me, but the long-term vision, we know what we want to build,
and that's made a difference.
That's made the difference.
Having that full, clear strategy, and what's part of the future for Counting Up on the horizon? So,
I mean, the vision is to be this one financial platform for a million small businesses. So we want to build a big business out and have big impact on small businesses. What that looks like is beyond the banking and accounting, it's additional financial services, so loans, credit cards, insurance. We've still got things we want to do, as I mentioned, on the banking side, so international payments. On the accounting side, MTD ITSA is the next thing we'll be working on. So yeah, it's to keep sort of progressing along that roadmap.
Yeah. And looking back at the reason why you sort of pursued Counting Up, from the way you're talking, I'm picking up that the energy, you have that energy and you're enjoying what you're doing. Do you see, have you got any other ideas bouncing in the back of your head that you're thinking, actually, I wouldn't mind giving that a go? Or what is your future like?
I've always got ideas. But no, I think the learning from ClearBooks was get focused. Like if you want to be successful, you get focused on doing one thing really well. So that's what we're doing at the moment, and there's plenty of scope to have ideas and be creative within Counting Up. Just keep the focus on the product. Keep it to the core, accounting and banking.
Yeah. Now, from my personal experience, having a board and being accountable board helps me maintain that focus. Does that have the same resonate, or does that resonate with yourself?
Yeah. So I mean, our board, especially because they're all from professional venture capital sort of background, there is a natural focus on growth. That's the key. So you're constantly getting that reminder that we need to grow and grow fast and move to the next stage of the journey. So yeah, no, the board's good for reminding me of that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I have the same sort of view. I know speaking personally, there's always ideas every week. You think, oh, what about that? What about that? About that? But having a board now works for me.
Yeah.
Where if I didn't have that board, I'd probably be a director of about another 10 different companies by now.
Actually, also my management team, my senior management team, are quite good with me because, like, we're pretty open about it. They will say that Tim's the ideas guy, and they're both sort of my CTO and COO are more sort of, let's do things well and let's stick to one thing and let's get that done. So that natural tension between us normally results in a good outcome. Like, so Tim wants to go off and do something and kind of restrained by the other two, and it normally ends up in a good result for everyone.
And if you was to give some advice to somebody who has an idea and needs some money to get it off the ground, if I keep it that open, what would you be saying to that person?
So I think if you want it to be, create a big company, not everyone does, but if you want to create a big company that has big impact, the idea has to be have a big addressable market. Like, if you want to raise capital, it needs to be something that could be used by, millions of people or millions of businesses. So check, is the idea big enough? The other thing I think with any idea that an entrepreneur has is, ask someone that's going to be honest with you, is it a good idea? Like, I mean, I've had so many ideas, and actually the one, and I tell my wife about them as well. I'd say, what do you think about this? And she'd say, that's rubbish. But the one idea that she said, okay, maybe you should quit your job and do that, was ClearBooks. Like, when I told her about this cloud accounting software idea, she said, because I had quite a well-paid job at that time. I was working as an equity research analyst. And, I quit my job. I went from earning like quite good money to a third of what I was earning. So I, definitely sense check the idea. And if you do want to raise money and it's a big idea, then angel investor networks, find people on LinkedIn. Also, all the VCs that, you can get a list of all the VCs in the UK really easily if you Google it, and just create your 10-page PowerPoint and send it off and see what happens.
Yeah, and what's the key data that they should be, or what information they should be putting into that PowerPoint?
That this is a big idea that could, have real reach and create a big business, because that's what VCs care about. Like, can you build a big business here? Anything that gives you credibility as the person that can do that, because when it's just an idea, basically they're betting on you. Okay, there's this big opportunity, but can this person deliver on that opportunity? So anything that gives you credibility, I'd put in. And yeah, just kind of try and break down the roadmap of how you're going to get, what you're going to do with the money. Like, so there must be an amount of money that you need, but what are you going to spend it on? Because, and that also comes to the credibility of you. Like, do you have a plan for this money that you're going to receive? They're probably three key bits.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Interesting story.
Thank you.
Good chatting with Tim. And Countingup breaks so many moulds from traditional advice, as in the going out for finance didn't involve hundreds of page documents of business plans, but you've done it. You was advised against doing it by so many people, saying it was a crap idea, but you went ahead and did it, and it's become a great business. And it's continuing to grow. So thank you very much for sharing your story with us. I hope you enjoyed watching this interview. Please remember to hit subscribe and like. It really helps us with the algorithms for YouTube, and I'll look forward to bringing you more interviews in the next episode of Drive, the small business podcast from UKBF.